program, family. I'm Michelle Peel, the Communications Director here at New Jersey LCV, and I'm here with my favorite Executive Director, Ed Potosnik, and we're back for the final installment of our series on the Common Agenda. Ed, once again, let's go over what is our Common Agenda. Let's talk about the items and why they're so important.
Well, we have a common agenda that we put together with a whole lot of our partners, over 24, for the course of a legislative session, which is 2 years, 5 pieces of legislation that we're prioritizing to get passed to protect the environment, public health, and of course, as a voting organization, the access to the polls. Our 5 agenda items include 100% clean electricity by 2035, working to modernize our transportation system. I mentioned voting rights, which is really critically important. We're also big supporters of open spaces in the most densely populated state, New Jersey. We have to do more to protect our forests, farms, our historic sites, and of course our parks, which are critical. And then of course, everyone is supportive of, and it's really important for our economy, clean, safe drinking water. That's affordable and reliable. And so many water-dependent businesses call New Jersey home for their manufacturing, including Budweiser just outside the Newark airport. So ensuring that we get the contaminants out of water is a critical priority for us, particularly lead in our drinking water.
Thanks. Now, it's in our name, voting, the New Jersey League of Conservation Voters. Talk about the New Jersey Voting Rights Act, which is our final issue in the Common Agenda, why that's so important, especially for a state like New Jersey, because let's face it, you would think in New Jersey, we're not, a state that has suppressed people's voting or opposed people voting. So why are we dealing with this here in New Jersey?
Well, it's critical. I mean, we can't necessarily say what you said is true. Our efforts underway to suppress people from being able to vote, my guess is yes, folks running for office or the folks affiliated with them are doing everything they can to put up barriers to ensure that their candidates are successful. We have a large disparity in New Jersey between the white population and its percentage of registered voters and people of color and their registered percentage, meaning, I think it's something like 60% of Latinos are registered to vote who are eligible, where it's up around 90% for white families, white voters. And that's a big difference. So first, why is it that folks aren't registered? Is something happening where it's not accessible in a native language spoken at home? In my town, there's 47 different languages are spoken at home. If if English is not your primary language, you may not know how to register to vote. You go to a website and you don't know what to do once that's there. So you need a friend to translate or some sort of internet translation services. We could be doing a lot more to make our voting and how to register to vote more accessible to folks who are not English native speakers and are working to learn the English language, but in the meantime, are having some barriers. That's just one example. It's not like cities or counties are going out of their way. Maybe some are, but probably most are not, to get rid of a barrier like language. There's also physical disabilities that need to be accounted for. Are we doing more to be inclusive there? If you have limited physical mobility, are we getting the word out how you can vote from home, how you can get an assister? These are things that we could be doing more to remove those barriers. But more than anything, there's a disenfranchisement in communities of color to voting. The state has done a lot. Governor Murphy is to be commended, but there's more work to be done. One of the things we were able to do in a previous piece of legislation is ensure that there's no intimidation at the polling places. So that means that when they pull up, they're not seeing, no one's seeing police activity, which might make you think, oh, something bad's happening here. So no flashing lights. It's a safe place. I want to make sure it's secure, but it's not intimidating, where an individual would be less likely to vote because they were worried someone might be there that's do harm to them or come after them for some sort of reason. So that's an issue. In addition, we've got to make sure not only people feel safe, but that the voting is happening in a way that's appropriate. So if there's a town or a county that somehow has been in violation, they haven't been doing a good job, we need a way to make sure that they have a plan in place to remove the barriers that exist. And the New Jersey Voting Rights Act would put some teeth into requiring counties to step up and remove those barriers. So if there's ever a substantiated claim, they would need to fix that going forward. And that requires a plan that's approved and then overseen that it's been implemented properly.
Mm-hmm. So now we're working with a lot of partners on this. At this point, where do you think we are with this?
Well, I think, quite frankly, it's interesting. I think there's not enough energy around bringing up our voting rights in New Jersey to a higher standard. I think there's particularly maybe something you mentioned, which is apathy. Like everything seems fine, but it's not fine. I think we have to remember there's a reason why there are lackluster voter participation numbers. And some of those things can be eliminated by making it easier to vote. A lot of folks are looking at the most recent election in 2024 as lower turnout than 2020. Well, in 2020, everyone was mailed a ballot to their home. And there's no barrier to filling out there's less barriers, I should say. There's always something. But grabbing a pen, filling out your ballot at home, dropping it back in the envelope, signing it properly, and sending it back is a lot less of a barrier than if you don't have a car, if you don't know where your voting location is, you don't know the hours, whether you're sick that day or you can't take a day off work because you don't have paid time off. Those are the kinds of barriers that we're looking to remove with a modern Voting Rights Act. And I would just say, folks, I think generally feel like everything's okay, so why change it? Mm-hmm. And the reality is we could be doing a lot better. And the numbers bear that out. 30 to 40% voting turnout is not something we should be proud of in our state. We should strive for more. And to me, that's exciting. So where we are in the legislative process is trying to push this bill. And we could use everyone's help at home, if you're watching today, to get involved with New Jersey LCV and our partners to push for John Lewis Voting Rights Act in the state of New Jersey to strengthen our laws, to make voting more accessible, more consistently protected, so that the folks that are legally allowed to vote can have their voice be heard in all our all-important elections. So if you're interested in learning more, we can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I know, too, voter apathy. Some people just say the system doesn't work for me, but I have a friend that says that if you're not involved in politics, if you don't do politics, politics does you. As a local elected official, can you just talk about how important it is that people do vote and get involved? I
think it's so important. It shapes not only your community and the county and the state, but on the federal landscape, policies for years to come. If you're a longtime educator, so my background was as a science teacher, you only get one shot at first grade. So the administration at the federal level and the state level that wrote the rules for what's going to be taught in the schools and how it's going to be taught will shape that 1 year in your first, I would say, academic year of your academic career. You don't get that back. It's got to be done well. And that's what we're voting for when we're going out and voting. And of course, the environment. Once a plot of land is developed, once a bulldozer comes and takes out the trees or the native grasses or other vegetation, and with it, the other ecological components, the critters that live there, that's it. It's off the wild registry, and now it is a building. These are the kinds of stakes we have in elections. We're in a fight against the bulldozers to protect our communities and our way of life. I think it's a moral imperative that we do that for future generations. And who is elected matters if they're going to stand up and implement policies that protect our communities from further erosion and development, or leave it unabated for for-profit corporations. And I think those choices are clear in elections, and we want to make sure, in this case, the Voting Rights Act, that we're doing everything we can to remove barriers so people can get out there and voice their opinions about which candidates can be better on the environment.
Yeah, we have an election coming up soon, next year.
Right around the corner.
Right, yeah, for governor and the assembly.
That's right.
Yeah.
And, getting the Voting Rights Act in place in time for our gubernatorial elections would say a lot, I think, to the country, for New Jersey to boldly lead in ensuring that every voter in New Jersey can cast their ballot, can be registered without any encumbrance. And I think that's going to be really important for us to have a strong democracy moving forward.
Mm-hmm. So finally, we've talked about all 5 of our common agenda items. These can be found on our website. Tell us about that. And you always like to say, get involved with us.
Yeah, I mean, we need your help. These things don't happen on their own. Voting Rights Act is actually an uphill battle in the state of New Jersey. It shouldn't be. But the elected officials need to hear more from you, all of you at home, all of us that are activists and working as volunteers with New Jersey LCV and our partner organizations. You can learn more about the work we do at www.njlcv.org. And you can also sign up there to volunteer. And there's also, you can send us an email to info@njlcv.org. That's our email address. We need your help. We need to demonstrate through all the stories that folks have of when they get to a polling place and they've been removed from a role, or they thought they registered and they haven't, or again, language access is not there, or more importantly, people didn't register in the first place. To really modernize our system and make sure it's done securely, but there could be more access. And we need everybody to join us to get this across the finish line. So if you're an environmentalist, voting and having strong voting rights and access to the polls matters, and we need your help for that. If you're a supporter of democracy, we still need your help for that. If you support all the different issues I mentioned, education, we need your help to get this bill moving in the legislature. The easiest thing to do is to ask a politician to do nothing, to keep things the way they are. If you think our voting system is working with under 50% of folks voting year after year in non-presidential elections, then I guess sit on your couch and don't get involved. I don't think that's okay. I don't think you do. I think we'd like to get people voting more, and that's going to take all of us to get the Voting Rights Act across the finish line, to have committee hearings and have its time in the public discourse so we can get the bill signed into law in time for our important elections next year for governor and the entire assembly, as Michelle mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Ed, and thank you for joining us today. And stay tuned. You'll see us more talking about other important issues.
Thanks for all you do.